Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Beyond the ocean's embrace, a crimson sunset bled color into the sky, illuminating the coastal highway that stretched endlessly into the horizon. Each turn of the winding road revealed a new glimpse of breathtaking beauty. But the sole traveler behind the wheel of the rental car was oblivious to its allure. Santino Moretti's mind was a tempest, battling the tempestuous memories of a love lost, now 3 weeks gone. With a tight grip on the steering wheel, Santino took a deep breath, the briny air filling his lungs as he sought clarity and calmness. Clara's image haunted his every thought. Ending a 2-year relationship with a single conversation about diverging paths had shattered him, leaving him breathless and dazed. The coast will heal you. His sister's distant, faint voice urged him in a moment of vulnerability. Where no one knows your name, you'll find your peace again. An automated voice broke the silence, announcing his arrival at his sanctuary, a place of solitude and solace. Santino glanced at the modest beachfront cottage, its ocean-worn blue facade and small, welcoming porch, beckoning him home for the next 2 weeks. Perfect anonymity, perfect solitude. Hauling his suitcase from the trunk, Santino paused to appreciate the rhythmic crashing of waves against the shore. This remote town along the Pacific coastline was exactly what he needed, a place where he could be anyone or no one at all. Inside, the cottage smelled of pine cleaner and sea salt. The furnishings were sparse but comfortable, a plush sofa facing a small television, a kitchenette with basic amenities, and a bedroom with a queen-sized bed draped in crisp white linens. Sliding glass doors opened onto a private stretch of beach, where the day's final light glimmered on the water. Santino unpacked methodically, organizing his clothes in the small dresser, t-shirts, shorts, swimming trunks, all the expected items for a beach vacation. But when he reached the bottom of his suitcase, his movements slowed. Hidden beneath his toiletry bag was something he'd packed on impulse, something he'd never been brave enough to bring on any trip before. His fingers brushed against soft fabric, and he carefully withdrew a floral sundress in shades of blue and yellow. The material felt delicate against his calloused palms. Beneath it lay a carefully wrapped package containing a long blonde wig and a small makeup bag with peach lipstick, foundation, and mascara. For years, these items had remained locked in a trunk beneath his bed, only emerging on rare evenings alone in his apartment. Clara had never known about this part of him. No one did. But something about this trip, about being utterly unknown in this small coastal town, had emboldened him to bring these treasures along. Santino hung the dress in the closet, his heart racing. Would he actually wear it here, outside the safety of his apartment? The thought was terrifying, yet exhilarating.
2 weeks,
he murmured to himself.
2 weeks to be whoever I want to be.
The morning dawned bright and clear. Santino awoke to sunlight streaming through gauzy curtains and the distant cry of seagulls. For the first time in weeks, he felt something akin to peace. He prepared a simple breakfast of toast and coffee, then spent the morning walking along the shoreline, letting the cold water lap at his feet as he contemplated the day ahead. By late afternoon, a decision crystallized. He returned to the cottage, showered, and stood before the closet where the floral sundress hung. His fingers trembled slightly as he removed it from its hanger. Just once, he told his reflection in the bathroom mirror.
just to see.
The transformation was methodical. First, a careful shave, eliminating every trace of stubble from his face. Then, foundation applied with painstaking precision, followed by a subtle touch of blush and the peach lipstick that he'd selected specifically for this occasion. The blonde wig came last, adjusted until it fell naturally around his shoulders. When he finally slipped the sundress over his head, the fabric whispering against his skin, something shifted inside him. He paired it with white sandals he'd also packed secretively. Staring at the mirror, Santino hardly recognized himself. The person gazing back was softer, with gentle curves and an uncertain smile. Not Santino at all, but someone else entirely.
Elena,
he whispered to his reflection, the name coming to him unbidden. It had belonged to his grandmother, a strong-willed woman who had always encouraged him to be true to himself. Elena stepped back from the mirror, twirling once to feel the dress float around her legs. The sensation was liberating, like shedding an ill-fitting coat that had been worn for too long. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed a small purse, tucked her wallet inside, and approached the door. Her hand hesitated on the knob. Once she stepped outside, everything would change. There would be people, strangers who might stare or question, or worse. But the alternative was returning to the suitcase, to the hidden trunk under the bed, to the life half lived. The decision made itself. Elena opened the door and stepped into the golden evening light. The boardwalk was busy with tourists enjoying the last hours of daylight. Elena walked with cautious steps at first, certain that everyone was staring, that someone would call out or point. But as minutes passed with nothing more than the occasional polite nod from a passerby, her stride lengthened, her shoulders relaxed, the constant vigilance that had accompanied every public moment of Santino's life began to fade. At a small beachfront cafe, Elena claimed a table overlooking the ocean. A waiter approached with a friendly smile.
"What can I get for you, miss?"
The word miss sent a warm flutter through her chest. "A mojito, please, and whatever appetizer you recommend. The crab cakes are amazing. I'll bring those right out." As the waiter walked away, Elena realized she was smiling, a real smile that reached her eyes. When was the last time Santino had felt this kind of contentment, this sense of rightness in his own skin? The mojito arrived, followed by delicately plated crab cakes. As she sipped and savored, watching the sun sink toward the horizon, Elena made a decision. This would not be just one evening. For these 2 weeks, she would live as herself, as Elena, in this place where no one knew her past or questioned her present. Days melted into a blissful routine. Mornings began with Elena enjoying coffee on her porch, watching early swimmers brave the cool Pacific waters. Afternoons were spent shopping in the town's boutiques, where shopkeepers quickly came to recognize the blonde woman in the sundress as a friendly regular. One boutique owner, Marissa, even helped Elena select additional outfits, a red summer dress, white capri pants with a navy blouse, and an emerald green skirt with a matching top. "This green really brings out your eyes," Marissa had commented, adjusting the blouse's collar. "You should wear this color more often." By the end of her first week, Elena had established herself as a fixture in the small community. She had favorite tables at 3 different restaurants and a standing appointment for a manicure every 3rd day with Denise at the local salon. "Back home, I never make time for this," Elena confided during one appointment, as Denise painted her nails a soft coral. "Where is home?" Denise asked. Elena hesitated only briefly. Portland, but it feels distant now, like another life.
Vacations will do that to you. That's why we all love tourists. You remind us how special this place is when we start taking it for granted.
On the 8th day, Elena was enjoying lunch at the Salty Dog, her favorite seaside cafe, when a middle-aged woman with silver-streaked hair approached her table.
"Excuse me," the woman said.
"This might sound strange, but my friends and I—" She gestured toward a table where 4 other women sat, all watching with interest. "We meet every Wednesday for lunch and cards. We couldn't help noticing you're always dining alone. Would you care to join us today?" Elena's first instinct was panic. Extended social interaction meant more opportunities to slip up, to reveal something that might betray her. But the woman's smile was genuine, and the loneliness of dining alone had begun to wear thin. "I'd love to. Thank you for asking." The woman beamed. "I'm Patricia. We're completely harmless. I promise." The women at the table, Patricia, Donna, Ruth, Grace, and Helen, turned out to be locals who had formed their Wednesday lunch club 20 years earlier. They welcomed Elena with genuine curiosity and warmth.
"Are you visiting family in town?"
Grace asked, as they settled into their first round of cards. "No, just taking some time for myself," Elena replied.
"A reset, you could say."
"Ah," Ruth nodded knowingly.
"Man trouble?"
Elena couldn't help but laugh. "You could say that." "Well, you've come to the right place," Helen chimed in. "Nothing heals a broken heart like ocean air and good company." The afternoon passed in a blur of gin rummy, shared appetizers, and the kind of candid conversation that sometimes flows more easily among strangers. Elena told them a version of the truth, that she had recently ended a relationship and needed space to rediscover herself. The women shared their own stories of love and loss, offering advice that ranged from practical to outrageous. "You should join us for dinner on Saturday," Donna suggested as they were preparing to leave. "Patricia hosts a monthly potluck. Nothing fancy, just friends and food." Elena hesitated. A lunch was one thing, but an entire evening of socializing felt more precarious. "I won't take no for an answer," Patricia added. 7 o'clock. I'm the blue house on Marine Drive with the hideous garden gnome collection my husband refuses to let me throw away. The invitation hung in Elena's mind as she returned to her cottage. Something about these women reminded her of her own mother and aunts. Straightforward, kind, utterly without pretense. Their acceptance, however unwitting, had been a balm. Saturday arrived with overcast skies that cleared by late afternoon. Elena spent extra time on her appearance, selecting the emerald green skirt and top that Marissa had recommended, applying her makeup with care, and making sure her blonde wig was perfectly in place. She'd purchased a bottle of white wine to bring to the dinner and felt a flutter of nerves as she approached Patricia's blue house. True to description, the front garden boasted an impressive array of garden gnomes in various poses. Elena counted at least 20 before Patricia opened the door. "You made it! And you look gorgeous! Come in, come in!" The house was filled with the aroma of roasting chicken and the sound of animated conversation. Patricia led Elena to the kitchen, where Ruth was arranging a salad on a large platter. "Look who's here," Patricia announced. "Our card shark from Wednesday." Ruth looked up with a warm smile. "You survived our lunch club and still came back for more? You're braver than most." "The company was too good to pass up," Elena replied, handing Patricia the wine. "Excellent choice," Patricia approved. "This will go perfectly with Gary's chicken. let me introduce you to everyone." The gathering included the Wednesday Lunch Club women, their husbands, and a few other friends. Elena was introduced around the room, fielding questions about her stay in town and her thoughts on local attractions. To her surprise, the conversation flowed easily. These people took her at face value, a woman visiting their town, enjoying their hospitality. There were no suspicious glances, no double takes. Gary, Patricia's husband, carved the roast chicken while everyone filled their plates from the abundant side dishes. Elena found herself seated between Grace and a man named Robert, who owned the bookstore in town.
"Patricia mentioned you're from Portland,"
Robert said as they ate.
"Any recommendations for when I visit next month? My daughter just moved there for graduate school."
Elena spoke comfortably about her actual neighborhood, the coffee shops she genuinely frequented, and the bookstores that might interest another bookseller. The conversation wandered from there to literature, to coastal weather patterns, to the merits of sourdough versus conventional bread. As the evening progressed and dessert was served, a spectacular homemade peach cobbler, Elena realized she'd spent hours in conversation without a single moment of anxiety. These people saw her, truly saw her, and what they saw was simply Elena. The potluck marked a turning point. What had begun as a quiet, solitary vacation transformed into an unexpectedly social experience. Elena was invited to a beach bonfire, a local art show, and even a day trip to a neighboring town famous for its glass-blowing studios. During the glass-blowing excursion, Elena found herself paired with Donna's husband, Michael, a retired architect with a dry sense of humor. "Have you ever noticed," Michael observed as they watched a glassblower create an intricate blue vase, "that the most beautiful things come from the most extreme conditions? Heat, pressure, skilled manipulation, and out comes something entirely transformed." Elena nodded, the metaphor hitting closer to home than Michael could possibly know. "Sometimes I think people are like that too. We need the heat and pressure to become who we're meant to be." Michael glanced at her with newfound interest.
"That's quite profound. Are you a philosopher in Portland when you're not vacationing?"
"No," Elena laughed. "Just someone who's experienced enough transformation to recognize it." By the final days of her stay, Elena had established a rich social life that Santino had never managed to create back home. The irony wasn't lost on her, that in being her authentic self, she'd found connection far more easily than when living behind the mask of expectations. The night before her departure, Elena accepted a dinner invitation from the Wednesday Lunch Club women. They claimed a corner table at an upscale restaurant overlooking the harbor, where fishing boats bobbed gently on the tide. "A proper send-off," Patricia decreed, ordering champagne for the table. "To new friendships." "I can't thank you all enough," Elena said, after they'd toasted. "You've made these 2 weeks special in ways I never anticipated." "Will you come back to visit us?" Helen asked. "We've grown rather fond of our Portland friend." "I'd like that very much," Elena replied, meaning it. "This place feels more like home than anywhere has in a long time." Grace raised her glass again, to finding home in unexpected places. The words resonated deeply. Elena had come seeking escape, a temporary reprieve from reality. Instead, she'd discovered a truth about herself that couldn't be unlearned or reboxed. The thought of returning to Portland, of pushing Elena back into the shadows of Santino's life, created a hollow ache in her chest. That night, alone in the cottage, Elena packed her suitcase with methodical care. The sundresses, the blouses, the wig, all were folded and stored with reverence. But as she prepared to change into the male clothing she'd arrived in, something stopped her. For 2 weeks, she'd lived authentically. She'd been seen and accepted. The freedom of those days had awakened something essential within her. Not just a preference or a pastime, but her true self. The thought of burying Elena again felt not just painful, but impossible. Morning arrived with a clarity that only comes after a night of profound realization. Elena dressed in her green outfit and packed the last of her belongings. The cottage, which had witnessed her transformation, seemed to hold its breath as she took one final walk through its rooms. At the rental car, Elena hesitated only briefly before placing her suitcase in the trunk. The coastal highway stretched before her, leading back to Portland, to an apartment filled with Santino's things, to a life that suddenly seemed like someone else's biography. But this time, Elena wouldn't be left behind on this picturesque coast. This time, she would make the journey too. The drive back to Portland gave Elena time to contemplate the practical aspects of her decision. Her job as a graphic designer was primarily remote, requiring only occasional in-person meetings. Her apartment lease would need addressing, possibly finding a new place altogether, somewhere she could start fresh. Family would be the most challenging aspect, but Elena found herself surprisingly ready for those conversations. As the city skyline appeared on the horizon, Elena's resolve strengthened. The vacation hadn't been an escape after all, but a homecoming to herself. The following weeks unfolded in a series of careful steps. Elena began by telling her closest friend, Marcus, over coffee in her apartment. She had arrived home, showered, and dressed in the blue floral sundress, the first one she had worn on her vacation. "I've known something was different about you for years," Marcus said, after she finished explaining. "I just never had the right words to ask. Thank you for trusting me with this." His acceptance was the first cornerstone in building her new life. With Marcus's support, Elena began the process of coming out to select colleagues and friends. Some conversations were awkward, others surprisingly straightforward, but none were catastrophic. Her sister was next, a video call that Elena had rehearsed dozens of times in her mind. "I always felt like I was missing something about you," her sister admitted after the initial shock wore off. "Like there was a part you were holding back. This makes sense, in a strange way. It's going to take me some time to adjust, but I love you. That doesn't change." Work proved more straightforward than expected. Her remote position allowed Elena to transition professionally with minimal disruption. A name change in the company email system, a few explanatory conversations with direct supervisors, and her professional life continued largely unaltered. 3 months after returning from her coastal vacation, Elena's external life had largely aligned with her internal reality. She had legally changed her name, begun the process of gender-affirming medical care, and moved to a new apartment in a different neighborhood. A fresh start in a space that had never known Santino. But perhaps the most meaningful development came in an unexpected email one afternoon. Subject: Wednesday Lunch Club Road Trip, the header read. It was from Patricia. "Dear Elena, the ladies and I have decided that if you can't come back to visit us right away, we'll bring the lunch club to you. We've booked a weekend in Portland next month and demand you show us all your favorite spots. No excuses accepted. Patricia," and the usual suspects. Elena found herself laughing aloud in her new apartment, tears blurring her vision. The prospect of introducing these women, who had only ever known her authentic self, to her new life filled her with joy. When the Wednesday Lunch Club arrived in Portland, they embraced Elena with the easy affection of old friends. They spent the weekend exploring the city through her eyes, visiting her favorite bookstore, having brunch at her neighborhood cafe, walking through the rose garden on a crisp autumn afternoon. On their final evening together, over dinner at an intimate restaurant, Patricia raised her glass in another toast. To Elena, who found herself on our little stretch of coastline and was brave enough to bring that self home with her. The other women lifted their glasses, their faces alight with genuine affection. And to all of you, Elena responded, who taught me that being myself was not just possible, but wonderful. As she looked around the table at these women who had unknowingly changed the course of her life, Elena felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her journey had begun with heartbreak and escape, but it had led to something far more precious, authenticity and acceptance. Later that night, after seeing her friends off to their hotel, Elena walked home through the gentle Portland rain. Her blonde hair, now her own growing hair, no longer a wig, was tucked beneath an umbrella. The green raincoat she wore matched the skirt and top that had become something of a signature outfit. As she unlocked the door to her apartment, Elena thought about the suitcase that had traveled to the coast months ago. It now sat in the back of her closet, a reminder of the courage it had taken to pack those first feminine items, to step outside as herself for the first time. Some might have called it a disguise, those first days as Elena on the coast, but it had been the opposite, the shedding of a disguise worn for decades. In finding Elena, she had not become someone new, but finally allowed herself to be who she had always been. The next morning, Elena prepared for work at her home office. Her wardrobe had expanded far beyond the few items she'd taken on vacation. Today, she selected a professional navy dress with subtle gold jewelry, her blonde hair pulled back in a simple knot. As she settled at her desk, Elena opened her laptop and found herself smiling at the desktop wallpaper, a photo taken during the Wednesday lunch club's visit, all of them laughing on the waterfront with the city skyline behind them, friends who had known only her truth. The coastal vacation had been planned as a temporary escape from pain, but it had instead become the beginning of a journey home, not to a place, but to herself. Elena had stepped into the sunlight and discovered that she belonged there, that the world had room for her authentic self. Outside her window, Portland carried on its urban rhythm. Inside, Elena began her day, no longer divided, no longer hidden, whole at last, in the identity that had always been waiting for her, like the coast waiting for the return of the tide.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!